So my name is Matthew Biederman. I'm a visual artist, new media artist, tactical media worker. A lot of my work revolves around politics, policy, economy of the spectrum, of the electromagnetic spectrum. This kind of installation really tries to paint a larger picture of why the electromagnetic spectrum, which of course the radio spectrum is a part of, why it all should be open space, why it should be publicly available and publicly utilized. Office of Spectral Ecology has been operating for many years now, doing different sorts of incursions into policy making, into mapping or public space on the spectrum is really what the Office of Spectral Ecology is about. And it's about discussing the electromagnetic spectrum as a place of public space. Since it's all around us all the time, whether we're inside or outside, the spectrum for me is really important to talk about it as public space. So what you see here are different ways of interacting with that public space. So the screen behind me there is a set of samples around Barcelona where I measured the electromagnetic smog that comes from different objects. You start to get an idea of what sorts of things that you walk by when you're walking down the street expose you to different wavelengths of electromagnetic energy. The stripes behind me are the way that the spectrum is divided up by the government and ITU, the sort of International Telecommunications Union, who decides what goes where on the spectrum. And they have a very old, antiquated way of looking at it because technology today doesn't mean that we have to slice it up like this. There's what's called spread spectrum technology, which was first developed by an actress named Hedy Lamarr and her husband, George Antheil, who was an avant-garde music composer. And they realized a way for things to be on the spectrum at the same time. So this is the standard, but it's very antiquated. So I try to talk about having more public space, more open space on the spectrum. You can see little notes here that say, say that this small chunk of spectrum was recently auctioned off by the FCC and netted $19 billion. So it's a resource that the governments are very interested in tapping into because it's a natural resource that will never go away. But it's not owned. I mean, it can't be owned. It's everywhere, right? It comes from the sun. It would be like owning the sunlight. It's basically the same thing. So yet they've managed to instill this idea in everybody that it's, you know, that there isn't enough room on the spectrum and we have to carve out more spaces. So they're even talking about extending beyond the end of what you see here, several more terahertz chunk of bandwidth to re-auction even higher frequency spaces off, which is right now unlicensed. There's nobody really uses it. It starts to get very close to the visible spectrum. So I do different sorts of political actions. I mean, I became a bidder in this auction. Of course, I didn't win, but it forced the FCC to discuss why an artist might be interested in having some spectrum. They were interviewed about it, and I was in the newspapers about it. There are very few places now that are licensed for public space. They're just these small brown spots are the few places where amateur radio operators can use the spectrum. That's really the only open space. And 2.4 gigahertz where Wi-Fi operates. Otherwise, there's no place for regular people.